You are now listening to Nexxlegacy Radio, a radio station for the people.
What's good, my good people? This is Charles. I am Brandon Madison of Nexxlegacy Radio, and I'm here with a beautiful guest. And I wasn't going to say anything to her to start off, but I definitely want to acknowledge something that I always feel like should always be appreciated when you're surfing through social media. So I found this young lady catching good vibes with good music, 90s mostly, and doing a lot of things that just kind of made me think about how important music is overall. So I need anybody that's listening, will be listening or whatnot, to make sure y'all go ahead and check her out. You can just hit up Kyla Janell. You can actually go to Linktree, linktr.ee/Kyla Janell, and I have beautiful Kyla with me on Nexxlegacy. It's good, girl.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate you. You know what I'm saying? Coming on, talking music. And before we kind of start doing that, I mean, I got a glimpse of your beautiful self doing a lot of different things with music, 90s music, and just kind of creating good vibes and stuff like that. So I'm gonna start off top, like social media. When you kind of felt like, you know what, this is the thing I'm gonna do. What made you just start, just kind of catching fire the way you have? Like, how did it all come together?
You know, I got to tell you, it was by complete chance. I never planned any of this. So it's been a really crazy ride for the past 4 years. But I started back in COVID era, back in 2020, and just kind of like when TikTok started to become popular, and just joined and played around with the app a little bit. And I just loved the whole vibe of it. I loved the dancing, the goofiness, that you could play any music you wanted to. And I just started doing my thing. I just started lip syncing all the favorite jams from back in the day. And it just kind of went off from there. And here I am today. So
So it was a chance thing. COVID kind of shut everything and everybody down. So you couldn't go out and play with others like you once did. But
right.
Did it get to the point where you were like, you know what, not just lip singing, but just the music of the 90s? Because I always, we'll talk about this a little later as far as decades of music, but 90s always have a soft spot in my life for a lot of different reasons, memories and all. But did you know that it was going to actually, like, you know what, I think people are kind of feeling it? I mean, first of all, you're beautiful, so that's a given, but the nostalgia that I feel like has been created because of it is also a good thing, right? Did you know this was going to go down, or you just kind of like, boom, out of the blue, just didn't know it was going to take off?
At first it was kind of like boom out of the blue, just because it was all for fun, right? But quickly thereafter, like you mentioned, that whole nostalgia piece, because for me, it is completely nostalgia. And, that's why I kind of feel like I'm stuck in the 90s, because I just love that time period. I love the vibe, how life was back then. And it's really connected all of us that grew up in that era. And pretty quickly after, I was like, yes, people are responding to this because they love this time. They love this music. Of course, I always hear, music was so much better back then, and all of that, and just the communities of people that I've met along the way. So it's been amazing.
So scrolling through your social media, and people could hit up Kyla Janell on, literally, you can just hit her up. I'll continue to keep pushing out her information so people can follow and just soak up all the positive vibes of the game. So you pulled a lot of nostalgia moments from the 90s. And you mentioned earlier, just a little while ago, it just kind of creates a little pocket universe that we all lived in, that we have so many memories off that. So is 90s your favorite decade? Is that what I'm getting?
You know it is. Absolutely. Without a doubt, yes.
All right. Is there a specific favorite song or favorite moment? I know that's kind of hard. That's just like picking which kid is your favorite kid. You can't really answer that question, especially when it comes to music. But is there like certain moments of specific decades that you were like, you know what, 1994 was the year, or 95 or 96, you know what I mean? Like, was there like a specific year or moments in time when it comes to songs where you were like, you know what, this is by far the dominant year of the 90s or something like that?
Ooh, you picked a tough question when we're talking about the best decade of, hip hop and all our throwbacks. But, if I have to answer, all right, I'm going to give you my best answer here because, like I said, this is a tough question. But I would say that pocket of time between maybe 93 and 96, like kind of that mid-90s time period, because that was kind of like when you had Wu-Tang and, Dre and Snoop in the West Coast and Tupac, which is my personal favorite. And so I love that time period in particular.
I think that's fair to say, because I feel like, especially and I've seen your moments sharing Tupac's music and the vibe it creates and how you put it out there. To me, it's, that was the music evolution. I feel like the growth we saw Tupac have before he passed away, clearly in 96. So there's a lot of stuff you could take from, those specific years. And you're right, because the one thing I love that you do is you mix it up. You just don't do, specific sides of the coast. You do West, you do East, you do South, you do it all. So
right.
I want to say, like, you take those moments and you're just kind of like, okay, yeah, this is a moment. But, I always look at 90s music like this. I always feel like it was a decade of let's just say entrepreneurship, because you had so many different artists winning at the same time. You had so many groups winning. You had Jodeci. You had, you can go down a list of a lot of different groups, even some of the groups of the past. Like, it was great. It was a great decade to have. What's missing today? Like, if you compare all those decades and then you go into, like, I want to say right after DMX 2000s or whatever, it kind of went away. Like, I don't know what the hell happened, but what happened to that vibe of music that we used to have, and we don't have that no more? Because think about it.
I know.
Kyla, that was 30 years ago. Think about it.
Right.
Is that crazy?
Yeah, it is crazy. I mean, and that's why I do what I do. Because and that's interesting you say that. I feel like it was, the early 2000s. We still had there was some good jams. I mean, I do like a lot of the early 2000s for sure. But I want to say somewhere in the mid 2000s is when it, for me, like, it really dropped off. Like, what the hell happened, right? And then from there, I feel like you said, I stopped listening, because why continue when I have a plethora of throwbacks at my disposal, right, from the 90s and early 2000s.
Right.
So, I agree.
And I feel like a lot of music that you still haven't even touched yet, in terms of, music from the decade of the 90s is still, that's the thing I love about music, because it's free-flowing, it is continuous, and it is, stuff that I feel like a lot of us can catch on. So, I mean, going back to when you first started doing this, like during COVID, and when you kind of felt like, oh, this is starting to grow a little bit. A lot of people are not just like myself, but you're going places and doing things, and you got celebrities following you and certain things like that as well. Like, did you get, like, people sliding your DMs or your messages or whatever, and they say what they say? What do they actually put out there in terms of, like, not just the comments, but people on the low that's just kind of talking, you know what, Kyla, I appreciate the vibe. I mean, not only you look good, but I just gotta give you credit where credit's due. This is it. Like, what do they say?
Yeah, I mean, I would say pretty much what you said. Just that, I've been on your page, all night, and I just added all your songs to my playlist, and you are just taking me back to a bomb time in my life, and I just want to say I appreciate you. And those comments are just, I love those, because that's, if I could just put a smile on somebody's face and just make their day better, that's the world, right? So I definitely get a lot of messages like that. And unfortunately, I cannot respond to all of them, and I don't see all of them because there's a lot. But I wish I could, because I just love the people. For me, the people and the followers and my friends, they're the best. That's what it's all about.
No doubt. Kyla Janell is my guest on Nexxlegacy Radio, and I gotta ask you this because I see a lot of historic moments from different places in the '90s as far as decades of music, and I gotta and I always have a soft spot. '90s to me, like I mentioned earlier, has a moment of a lot of individual people winning. Like you had so many different groups, so many different moments and parts of time that it's just it's always going to stay with you forever. I'm going to slide into the 80s real quick because the 80s, in my opinion, too, had a lot of epic moments because you gotta tie it together where it's just like, think about it, Kyla, the fact that you watch a movie and those movies have soundtracks, and the soundtrack to the movies, you will never, ever forget. Those two intertwine so deeply in the 80s. You can talk about the 70s as well, as far as that decade with movies as well, but somewhere in the 90s still like that, but I don't think there was really like the 80s when it comes to that. I don't know. Tell me your thoughts about it though, like the movies, the moments, the early days of hip hop. It's different.
Yeah. So, well, I'll have to say I was a lot younger. I was born in 81. So I do not have as much knowledge about 80s hip hop because I was just so little, right? I started listening around 1990. I was like 9 years old, and I was listening to whatever I can get my hands on, or through MTV, the radio, and it was like LL Cool J and all of them. And so I mean, obviously, hip hop has grown so much, in the 80s were like that, almost like that golden period where it just all came together. And like you're saying, movies were a big thing in the 80s. So I feel like I watched a lot more movies as a kid in the 80s than I did in the 90s. But no, I mean, for me, I would say that, I'm, more obviously familiar with the 90s just because I was older. But I mean, you got to give credit where credit's due to the 80s hip hop,
And that's fair. I mean, clearly, NWA came out, 88, 87, 88. You were like 7, 8, whatever. So
right. So, there was no way.
I get it. It's different. Yeah, it's different. But the cool thing about it is, was there, especially going back to when you were younger, was, like you said, 90 was when 90s, literally 1990 was when you first kind of started getting a taste of certain things. Was there a song or songs that kind of gravitated to you when you were younger that you were like, you know what, this is the shit. I love this song or this artist or whatever?
Yes. I would have to say, if I had to give it one song, it would have to be LL Cool J, Around the Way Girl.
All right.
Yep. And, some other ones were like, do you remember, Aisha from Another Bad Creation?
ABC, absolutely.
And Candyman, and of course I had, my parents would only buy me things without explicit lyrics. So I had MC Hammer and Vanilla Ice and, all of those. But I would be trying to find out what else was out there and, listening to the radio and whatever. But I would say LL Cool J for sure. Because when I heard that song, I was like, this is it. This is the shit. Even at 9, yeah.
It's a vibe. It's a vibe, exactly. I mean, and I think music does that to you. It doesn't matter what decade, what age, whatever. If something's gonna move you, it's gonna move you. It's just you were young during the era of when Michael Jackson's Thriller came out. But I'm telling you, that album and that vibe was from people from 4 to 94. You know what I'm saying? So music has a way of bringing people in and having people move or feel a certain way. You know what I'm saying? So it's a good vibe. Kyla Janell is my guest on Nexxlegacy Radio, and I always look at it, Kyla, like this. When especially now, we both can say that we struggle trying to listen to music today because We're looking for substance. We're looking for vibes. We're looking for a good time in some cases. We're looking for moments in music where the lyrics literally can overpower a beat. But the blessing of it is if you can be able to get a beat and some dope lyrics with it too, you won.
That's what
is the one true moment that you feel like has to change in order for us to be able to get that back? Is it more people stop copying people, or is it something that you can think of that will be able to kind of get people like steer it in the right direction when it comes to musical growth? Because I feel like we don't have it as much.
No, we don't. That is a tough question, because how do you transform what's going on in the music world? You know, what's the one thing, you know? And I don't think there's a one thing, but I think it starts with those who are at the top and trying to, you know, influence a whole nother generation. And I do see people that are out there that are newer, or that, you know, that aren't maybe as popular, but they have those roots. They have that foundation. They, you know, they're really, their lyrics, like you say, are meaningful. And, you know, I don't know, but it will be interesting to see, because as we know, music, you know, changes and we experience growth. So it will be certainly interesting to see where we end up in the next 5-10 years.
Well, all I know is I hope it has an impact on people the way that it has had on you, because you were able to take something as far as musical content from the people that you have admired in music and more, and you turned it into a cultural thing where it doesn't really matter what age or whatever it is. I feel like a lot of people are kind of grabbing to moments because of how it made you feel, and they catch that vibe. And isn't what music's supposed to be just a vibe, right? It's supposed to make you feel a certain way.
It is. It's all about the vibes. And that's why I always say you can never replicate these 90s vibes, because they're one of a kind. And it does make you feel a certain way. I don't think I've come across a song in the past, I don't know, 15, 20 years that has, or even longer, that is giving me that vibe. And I think when I say that vibe, it's like something that our generation only knows what that means, right? But you're so correct about that.
Do you think when it comes to, you know, your kids, future kids, or whoever, you think they're going to have the same kind of memories with today's music?
I don't know. Inquiring minds would like to know.
I couldn't even come out with that question right there. Like, I don't know.
I don't know. Well, you know what? My kids, I expose them to everything, so I'm hoping that they catch a little bit of the old school vibes as well. So I hope that they can, you know, because I mean, I'm a big music lover, and so I just hope that they love music the way that I do, and they do, and they like all kinds of different genres and everything. So, you know, I'm hoping that it has an impact on them as they grow up, the same as it has for me.
I could dig it. My daughter's 21, but she is like stuck in the 80s, even with 80s fashion, like, you know, music fashion. She
Love
pulled
that.
things from there where I'm kind of like, oh, where's it? You know, and sometimes I just think it just catches kids in a certain place. Just like you mentioned your kids, you expose them to a lot of different decades of music and give them an opportunity. I feel like it was that way for me growing up as well. Like, I got heavily into like Isley Brothers and Earth, Wind and Fire and some of those bands because of what my mom listened to, right? So, you know, but then it stuck with me, right? And I think it's cool. I'm going to ask you about fashion. So 90s fashion, if you could take 3 things in 90s when it came to when it comes to fashion and bring it here in 2024, what would you take?
Ooh, I love your questions. Oh, you know, I have one actually. Okay, you know those starter jackets that everybody wore? Let's bring those back.
Let's go.
Yeah, let's do this. I love those because, you know, I'm from Chicago and it gets cold as hell here, right? So I could afford one of those starter jackets for many months out of the year. What else? They actually have brought back some 90s fashion with like the wide leg pants. I love that right now because I'm wearing those and I'm like, those are so much better than those like 80s skinny jeans.
All right.
So yeah, I'm digging that right now. And gosh, what else? I don't know. I'm just what's popping in my head. There was like those Looney Tune shirts. Why did everybody wear those? Do you know what I'm talking about? I just thought of that. It just popped in my head right now. Isn't that wild?
I do.
I don't know.
I remember.
Remember Hypercolor? Did you ever have a Hypercolor shirt?
Come on,
yeah.
Kyla, absolutely.
Why don't we have those anymore? Those were cool, right?
I mean, we can't go wrong with like Carl Kanai, like some of the fashion stuff that took place or went down back in the day. Absolutely, like come on. I mean, the overalls, you remember those, right? You remember the overalls?
Of course. Oh yeah, of course. I mean, I was there.
Yeah. I mean, those, a lot of fashion, music, all that stuff kind of come hand in hand when it comes to certain things too. So, and especially I can kind of take this. Kyla Janell is my guest on Nexxlegacy Radio, and I always look at like the extensions of, who we are, the emotions of music can come into play really well. Like if it's, let's go party type of thing, then you're going to throw on something that's hot, right? You might be in your feelings or you might be deep in love. So there's love songs that can carry you throughout. Breakup, same thing. You go through that.
Right.
Like there's a lot of emotion that comes with it. When you start posting or putting up certain things on there, are you just going with the emotion of a moment, or are you just kind of like, all right, you know what, I'm in my feelings about this one, so let's go, let's get it?
I'm all of the above. I completely go with the flow. If I'm not in a good mood or something, I mean, maybe, but I mean, I everything I have on my page is totally authentic because I love the whole, I just vibe with the music and whatever it is. And honestly, I feel like for example, if you put on a love song or a sad song right now, I could feel it. Even if I'm not sad, right? I can kind of feel it. So I guess it can kind of go both ways. But I love that about our music is that we do have a song for everything, every emotion, whether we're out wanting to have a good time and party, or if there's something more sad or there's a story to be told. Even through hip hop, there's everything from gangster rap to, more conscious hip hop to all of that. And I love that variety that we can really tap in to all those parts of us and, and just listening to all that's out there. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I think the missing piece of what you just mentioned is the fact that, we lived in a decade of diversity too, because we had a little bit of something for everything, right? Like, we had gangster rap, we had, we had the backpack rap, they called it back in the day, right? Like there was conscious rap. There was so many different layers of the culture of hip hop that I feel like we grew up on. We don't see as much, so we have to reach back, like you mentioned, to be able to get that. And I don't think that's a bad thing because I feel like if we, it'll eventually make its way back, but people like yourself and others are giving us an opportunity to look at it through a different window of a reflection, which I feel like is great because, to me, when I look at your stuff, I always be like, man, she pulled a song that I either haven't listened to. I'm a radio guy, so remember. So it's just like I still feel the feelings of when certain songs hit, and I'm like, those moments, right? And I appreciate you for that because sometimes, and I know you know this too, like, we try not to take musical moments for granted because I feel like our era, our decade of music, as we mentioned, the 90s, like, there'll never be another Tupac. Period. There'll never be another Biggie. There'll never be another Big Pun. There's just so many different layers of who we are and what we do. We just don't take those artists for granted anymore, right? Like, we have to remember and honor and, celebrate the music they gave us.
Absolutely. No, and, you're so right about that. And that's why, one of the reasons why I try to do Tupac Tuesday. And I hear that from a lot of my followers, too, that, this is such a great way just to honor him and remember him. And, for me, he's my favorite. So, I've been listening to him for so long, and it never gets old to me. And just because he was such an important piece in the culture and hip hop history, and just him as an individual, I can go on and on about Tupac, but I just think he is just incredible for all that he has given to the world. And so to honor him is like the least we can do, right?
In a short window too, like, that man is
right
beyond years. He left us so soon, and we have that's the thing that sucks about just life in general. Like, we just didn't see him at his, we saw him at one of his heights, but we didn't see more, because there should have been more to his evolution than we were witnessing. But of course, we're going to appreciate what he gave us clearly and never take that for granted. Kyla Janell is my guest on Nexxlegacy Radio, and if you could, a couple more questions. If you could name, or if you not even name, if you can give me maybe a handful of songs that is the soundtrack to your life, what would those songs be? And I know there's a lot, but if you,
I was going to say, so you mean my favorite song?
Your own personal soundtrack. Like if you was to say your life, the years that you lived, the stuff that you've done, the highs and lows of it all, if you could sum up your own personal soundtrack in maybe 3 or 4 songs, what would it be?
Oh, gosh. I think I'm thinking about this too deeply now, the way you say that, but I just have to, in my head, I'm like, what are the songs that, when I look back, I'm like, these are the songs that I listened that were my favorites, Well, let's keep it, I mentioned this before. Let's start with LL Cool J, Around the Way Girl, because like I mentioned, that was what introduced me to, that real hip hop that I grew to be obsessed with, right? And just, tapping into that different genre of music at that time in my life. And then, I have to say, one of my all-time favorite songs is Notorious Thugs. There's something about that song to me that I don't know. It just gives me chills still to this day every time I hear it. Something about Bone and Biggie together and the music with it, and I can just go on and on about that song. Mm-hmm. And I got to throw in a Pac song, and there's a lot. Probably my favorite Pac song of all time is So Many Tears. And it's not that I can relate to any of these songs at all. It's just that I love them so much and appreciate them so much, and they're just some of my favorites. So I would say those 3.
I feel like with So Many Tears, because I feel like that's that whole Me Against the World album just kind of came in an era where it was, clearly he was in jail, for, a lot of it after, the album came out. That song in general, it has a Stevie Wonder sample. It's just the lyrics, everything about it was just hitting that certain thing where it's just kind of like it pulls on your heartstrings for this moment, because you just kind of feel like he was just, you could tell he's one of those artists, and correct me if I'm wrong when I say this, but I think you'll have my back. It's just kind of like everything that he wrote and put out there to the people, you just feel like you was right there with him while he was writing that shit down. And at the booth, putting all this shit together and everything else, like you just felt it on so many different levels. That's why he's always going to be the greatest of all time, in my opinion, because to me, it's just like we were right there with him. He made us feel like that.
Right. Greatest of all time. And that is the one thing about him that I love so much, is that he can make you feel like you feel his emotions, his heart pour out. I don't really get that from too many artists. When you think about it, there's not very many artists out there in general that can really kind of put their heart and soul on the line and then relay it in such a way that makes you kind of like feel it. you almost can't put it into words how he raps, you know.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
Kyla Janell is my guest on Nexxlegacy Radio, and in closing, I want to give you the floor. I want you to let the people know where to find you. And before you do that, do you, like you said, you know, Tupac Tuesdays, do you just kind of like go like, all right, today's the day, I'm just going to do this? You don't schedule it out. Just whatever mood hits you, like a certain song, you just kind of like do what you do.
Yeah, I do. I mean, a couple years ago, I was throwing out like 6 videos a day, and I was doing Tupac Tuesday every single Tuesday. Now, I don't post as often, but yeah, it's kind of when the mood strikes. So you gotta follow me and just watch for my videos when they pop up, you know.
All right.
But yeah, you can find me. Kyla Janell is my TikTok handle, and then Kyla Janell _ is my Instagram.
All right, people. I will be tagging you, her, them, everyone, period, as my support will always be continuous. It's not just this moment, Kyla. You and I were connected through music and more, and I just want us to be able to share in the wealth of it all. And it's just, you know, I always feel like, you know, my radio station, when I first started doing this, I wanted to give the people what they want in terms of diversity. I just don't want to put every, you know, the same genre of things out there for the people. I just want to mix it up so people can have these conversations like we're having, so people can talk about music and how it made them feel when they first heard what they heard. So, you know, music has a good way of intertwining a lot of folks. So not only do I appreciate you, keep doing what you're doing, because, you know, it's definitely inspiring in a lot of different ways, but I gotta love it for the fact that, you know, you're giving us stuff to be more positive about in a crazy ass social media world. There's so much negativity out there. Bringing something like this is amazing. So I'm glad I stumbled upon your page, and that's why I was like, oh, I gotta holler at this woman. She is amazing. She just gives me those kind of vibes where it's just like, hey.
Thank you so much. I really am happy that you stumbled upon my page as well. I'm just glad that I can give you, as well as everyone else, those good vibes and just bringing us together with good old music.
Absolutely. One more time for the people. Let people know where they can find you.
At Kyla Janell on TikTok or Kyla Janell _ on Instagram.
All right. Nexxlegacy Radio has beautiful Kyla Janell. Thank you again for just giving me these moments, but also thank you for giving me extended memories of a lot of what you do. So I appreciate you. Don't be a stranger, though.
No, absolutely never. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, I'll be in touch. You take care, okay?
All right, you too. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the #1 radio station for the people.